What do you got, Coach? 3 things that all coaches need. Who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of coaches?
New York or the Aces? Definitely going with the Aces.
All right, 4th down. Who has the tougher job, coaches or officials? If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why? For Texas, it's different. Welcome, everyone, to all of those who are watching on YouTube, or if you be listening to this audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. This is the Coaches Co-op, where coaches connect, grow, and share the grind. I'm your host. My name is Michael Prejean, better known as Coach P. Each week, I'm teaming up with coaches across the country to break down the wins, the lessons, and everything in between. This week, I am teaming up with Carl Hank Semler. Coach Semler has 31 years of experience in education and has been an athletic coordinator, head football coach at North Forney High School and Aldine High School. He's taught just about every subject in social studies, with several students earning college credit through AP exams. He has coached just about anything a kid can do, with well over 100 athletes moving on to compete at the college level on scholarship, and some moving on to professional careers in the NFL and MLS. Right now, Hank's exactly where the Lord wants him, as associate head football and head boys track coach at Lubbock High School in Lubbock, Texas. He felt God's gentle push to become a lifelong learner. So in December of this year, he will graduate from Arkansas State, and then you will address him as Dr. Semler. Hank is always looking for high character men and women for coaching positions, and he can't wait to see what the Lord has in store for him next. As for him and his family, they will serve the Lord. Hank is married to his best friend and the love of his life, Meg. They've been married for 30 amazing years, and he is the father to 2 of the biggest blessings in his life. Put your virtual hands together as we bring to the stage. We're going to go ahead and put that doctor on there now. Dr. Carl Hank Semler. Coach, welcome to the Co-op. I'm so glad you have given your time to us to be here with us this evening. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Coach P. Thank you for having me on.
So glad you're here. So there's one other thing that I forgot to add to the doctor. We also have to add best-selling author to your name as well. Best-selling author.
You too.
Yeah, I'm part of that as well. So for those of you who may not know what I'm referring to, it's the Coach's Path. Right? The Path for Coaches, Volume 1, Mentoring. So I just want to go ahead and let's plug the book here. If you look down at the bottom of the screen, you can purchase this on Amazon.com, The Path for Coaches, Volume 1, Mentoring. Or if you want to, just go ahead and get in touch with Coach Semler, and he can get you a copy. There's his information screening down at the bottom. All right. On IG, you can find him at Coach Semler. Same thing on X or Twitter, whatever it is that you want to call it. You can get in touch with him there. Coach Semler. Dr. Carl Hank, best-selling author Semler, is in the Co-op with us tonight. All right, Coach.
All right.
Great bio. But I want to give you the opportunity quick before we dive in to just tell us a little bit more about yourself, something that may have not been in the bio that you want to share with those who are watching or listening.
Well, I've been a very blessed man over the course of 31 years. I've got I've got the perfect, just really the perfect coaching situation. I've got a loving family that, have been my biggest fans. They've been, at times, my best critics. I always trying to keep my head out of the clouds, feet on the ground, and making sure that I am my priorities are right, and I'm always trying to do what's best for everybody around me. And then working in schools, I've again been just a tremendously blessed man. I've learned from some of the best in the business. Todd Dodge for 7 years at South Lake Carroll, and Steve Lineweaver for a year at Euless Trinity, and then I've been in Houston. I've worked with Richard Lazaro down in Willow Ridge, and just amazing men.
It's good, Coach. Listen, we know I've been in Texas. I'm not a native Texan, but I've been here about 25 years, and Texas is different. So when you get the opportunity to do it as long as you have and meet as many people as you have, when you say you're blessed, I'm gonna hang my hat on that. I believe you. Having experienced what it's like to be involved in Texas high school athletics for the past 2 decades. It's good stuff, Coach. All right, Coach, let's do this. This is the segment that we call Talk That Talk. So what I want you to do here, Coach, is I want you to talk about all of the great things that are going on in your program, in your building, in the athletic program in general, and in the Lubbock community. So Dr. Best-selling author, Coach Hank Semler, Talk That Talk.
All righty. Well, this is year 4 in our changing the culture at Lubbock High School. It's it already has. Lubbock High is a very storied program in Texas high school athletics. They've won state championships in just about every sport over their existence. You drive through Lubbock and you go down 19th Street. Lubbock High. It has that classic Spanish architecture. It's a state historic landmark, and so it's a real honor to be able to be there. Our talent base is improving almost. It feels like day by day. We've been in some of the toughest districts in West Texas, and I would stack our districts up against any in the Metroplex or Houston that we've been in. It's when you've got Amarillo High and Amarillo Tascosa and Palo Duro, and then Abilene High or Abilene Cooper. You're talking about some of the preeminent programs in the state, that you're going to have to line up and play district games with, and just stacked with D1 talent, and there are times where we feel like we're bringing a knife to a gunfight, with on Friday nights. But the coaching staff, our head coach Juan Rodriguez, and myself, we've made a commitment that we are we're in this. This is our ride or die program. This is our this is the one that we're going to hang our hat on at the end of our careers and say, this is a group of young men and women that we were able to bring about effective change. And in doing that, we help bring change to our community. When you go around Lubbock and you talk about excellent athletic programs, just about everybody's going to talk about Estacado. Their boys basketball program is one of the best in the state. Their football program, one of the best in the state. Recently, Monterey has really stepped up in sports. Their girls basketball team won state this year. The boys football team took Denton Ryan in the second round of the playoffs, took them to the fourth quarter. Then you got Coronado, and And then right up the road, you got the friendship schools, and you've got Lubbock Cooper. We're kind of, surrounded by excellence. And so, that's a tough road to hoe, but, we've got an excellent staff. We had just an amazing track season. Being the head boys track coach, I was incredibly impressed at how we ended our competitive year. We, every single track meet, we had every event, including pole vault, full. And, we doubled the number of kids that we sent to state. Everybody that we sent to state placed. And, just amazing things. And then that kind of springboarded us into spring ball, where, again, we had record numbers. We've had the kids' attitudes have changed. We keep telling everybody in the community, this group is different, where other groups have kind of been lacking some aspect of being, critical to being a successful program. This group not only has that aspect, but has it in spades. I mean, it's unbelievable, just the level of commitment that we're getting out of our kids. And the community is really responding to that.
Good. Listen, not being a native Texan, that was a great history lesson for me. So I absolutely love it here. Absolutely love it here. So that was really a really good history lesson for me. And you're in your hometown.
Well, pretty close.
Okay.
I grew up in the Fort Worth area and all, and I graduated from Euless Trinity back in a time where there were 5 Tongans in the whole school, and now that's if you Google Euless Trinity now, It's like, is there anybody but Tongans in there? But it's been a very it's been a pretty wild trip.
So 31 years into the journey, how did you get your start in coaching? And well, first, about how old were you when you knew you wanted to be a coach? And then how did that journey begin?
Well, I'm the child of a coach. My dad, he coached for 45 years, so I still got a long way to go. But
you trying to catch him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a field house with, basically anywhere from 5 to 15 dads, and then, mom was always wonderful when we got home. But, when I was in 6th grade, I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I didn't want to be an archaeologist. I wanted to be Indiana Jones, that guy, and I wound up going to Tech, Texas Tech to be an archaeologist. And it wasn't really until my sophomore year out here that that I looked at it and said, you know what, archaeologists spend a ridiculous amount of time in libraries, and it's not really Indiana Jones, and so then I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do, and my dad, talking to my parents and all, it made sense for me to go into coaching because teaching history, because, I've always been a history nut, and, the coaching aspect, I just saw the impact that my dad had on other kids. And I just really, I wanted that, I wanted to be to help kids, have a better life. And so, through athletics, and that's what really drove me into it.
It's good. 45 years with your dad, 31 years with you. There's probably not a whole lot that you haven't seen Right?
Very
So,
true.
I want to ask you about this. So 31 years in, you've been a head coach, campus athletic coordinator. Now you're an associate head coach. One of the things that you mentioned in your questionnaire was not being in the rush to climb the ladder.
Right.
So growing up in the field house, as you say it, then coming into the profession, talk about that. Were you, when you initially got into it, was your goal to eventually become a head coach one day? And how did you come across this wisdom of, thinking of your career as a road trip?
Well, I mean, that's, man, how long do we have?
Hey, take your time. Take your time.
All right. Well, the don't be in a rush is mainly geared towards the kind of the new generation of coaches, the Gen Z era that are entering the profession. And that was what Coach Rodriguez and I talked about in our chapter of the book was, we're Gen X coaches. And as our generation leaves the profession, we want to make sure that we're leaving it better than we found it, and we found it in pretty good shape, and so, but the whole don't be in a rush is geared towards, if being you may be a coach in your third year and you landed in a great program and you're having all this massive success as an assistant coach. That doesn't necessarily qualify you to be a coordinator, at your next stop. It doesn't, the other thing is, if you are having fun, if you are enjoying the ride in your current location, why leave? Why walk away from that? There have been times in my career where I have left positions that I was just really, I loved it there. I loved it at the school. I loved working with those kids and my coworkers and admin. And, but that bug in the back of my head that said, hey, if you're going to be a head coach, you need to move on to this. You need to try to get this job and do this. Sometimes that forced me into bad decisions, where I wound up in places that I was not a very good fit. And sometimes, I think sometimes we think about checking those boxes to get where we want instead of enjoying what's actually inside that box. Some of my favorite years in Houston were at Willow Ridge High School. I spent 2 amazing years with Coach Lazaro and his staff there, and I made a whole lot of friends. And we so that when I was lucky enough to be named the head coach of Aldine, I was able to bring one of my really good friends up to be my offensive coordinator. And but if I had just gone to Willow Ridge and after a year said, I don't know that this is really for me, I'm out of here, I wouldn't have really had that experience. And so, there's coaching careers should be like a road trip instead of a ladder. Like I always see I see a lot of the Christmas gifts that coaching wives get their husbands that have the family name at the top, and then each rung is like where they've been, in the position that they've had. So it kind of looks like a ladder. If I ever got a gift like that, I would want it to be a map, and have these wonderful schools that I've been at, have those starred on the map, all over the map, and have, a nice winding road, that dictates, okay, how many years or what were the years in this travel, because really at the end of it all, when we look back, you want to be able to look back at each spot and say, okay, this is what I really loved about this place. this is what I really learned about this place, and if you're there simply to move up, then, you're not going to have a lot to answer for about that. It's going to be, well, I spent a year here and then I moved to here. Well, and then you get asked about that year and I taught this and I coached this, and what kind of impact did you have on those kids? What kind of impact, what legacy did you leave there? Because if it sounds to me like you just taught those kids, well, they were basically a stopover in your career, as opposed to young people who need guidance.
Coach, that is rich. That is rich. I had to put it on the screen here. I had to put it on the screen because that is rich. Coaching careers should be like a road trip, not a ladder.
Thank you.
For those of you who are watching or listening, make sure that you put a pin in that. We are here on the Coaches Co-op with Coach Hank Semler of Lubbock High School. All right, Coach, there's another thing that you have in here. I want to touch on this one because I know this one is filled with as much wisdom as what you just blessed us with. So one other thing that you said is every coach has to endure the wilderness.
Yes.
So learn while you're there and embrace the opportunity to experience rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
The desert sky is truly beautiful at night. Coach, I need you to dig into that. I need you to break that one down to the mechanics so that we understand exactly what you're talking about there. Every coach has to endure the wilderness. Go ahead, Coach.
Gladly. I should have added that the wilderness is different for every coach, as well. It's, unfortunately for some coaches, the wilderness is divorce, because you put your career ahead of your family. For some coaches, the wilderness is you find yourself in a losing program that, is, people look and say, well, why are you there? And they question why you went to this school. They question, did you have a hand in this program falling off? Did you, are you the reason? And a lot of times coaches, we get blamed. We always absorb more blame than we deserve, but we also take credit for a lot of success that we don't deserve, and the wilderness, what I love about the wilderness is exactly what I put in that statement. You got to stop and look around, because if you do, you'll understand that the wilderness really it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to hate. It's nothing to, it's something that you need to, it's almost poetic, it's something that you need to take a step back and say, well, okay, here I am. Now, what is good about this? The night sky, man, if you've ever been out west and you've seen the desert sky at night, I mean, that is one of the most beautiful sights that I can ever, that I'll ever remember, the sky over the Grand Canyon, but all too often we find ourselves in a wilderness and it's panic. It's, I've got to get out of here as soon as I can. I can't, and we push the panic button. We play the blame game. It's so-and-so's fault that I'm here. It's, this person's to blame. If you're in the wilderness, it's because, I hate to say it, but you did something or you didn't do something that landed you in the wilderness. And sometimes you did something really, really good for a whole lot of people that put you in that wilderness. and, one of the things that I always think about is, if Jesus made it through the wilderness, and his wilderness trip was infinitely worse than anything any of us could be subjected to, infinitely worse. And if our Lord was able to go through that, then, who am I to balk at the wilderness and say, nah, hey, that ain't for me. I got to get out of here. So, sometimes our stops along the way, we don't know that they're the wilderness, but they turn out to be. Sometimes our personal lives, we have family problems that pushes us into the wilderness. Sometimes we get lured into the wilderness with, by people saying, oh, hey, we need you to come here and save our program. We need you to do this. Will you take this job? And they offer us money, they offer us vehicles, all that kind of stuff. And so you take the position, and then all of a sudden it's, wait, this is not what I signed up for. Well, welcome to the wilderness. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and gripe? Are you going to, you think about Job, are you going to sit down and pout? Or are you going to settle down and say, okay, I'm here for a reason. Let me find that reason and let me live that, reason.
That's good. I'm not going to jump into the book too much. So, but you do have something here in the book. So you talk about your mentoring program is built on 2 core principles. First being getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And then secondly, not being an actor in someone else's movie. And then you go on to say that pouting is not allowed in your office. If you want to know more, I'm telling you, you need to get the Path for Coaches Volume 1 mentoring. Coach Semler's information is down at the bottom of the screen. Get in touch with him. Get the book from him. All right. There's also, you can go to Amazon, right? You can go to Amazon.com, the Path for Coaches, Volume 1. I probably should fix my little typo there. It's not the Path for Coach, it's the Path for Coaches, Volume 1 mentoring. All right, Coach. Coach, that is so rich. That is so rich. There's so much more we can get into, but let's do this. Coach, we're gonna play a little game here before we get into crunch time.
All right.
How about it?
Absolutely. Fire away.
So what this is agree or disagree questions for experienced coaches. Agree or disagree coaches for experienced coaches. Okay. So I'm just going to read the phrase or statement, and then you just tell us if you agree or disagree. You ready, Coach?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. Agree or disagree. The longer you coach, the more patient you become.
I agree.
Okay. All right.
There are a lot of times that, there are a lot of times that I find myself saying, if this was 5 or 10 or, 5 or 10 years ago, I would have made some crazy sounds and, walked off stomping. And if it was 15 or 20 years ago, I might have grabbed that kid, but nowadays it's just kind of like, hey, just get back over there. Come on. It's going to be all right.
Yeah, that's good. Listen, wisdom, the wisdom that comes with it. So I'm pretty sure I know what the answer to this one is, but here we go. You coach differently in year 15 or year 31 than you did in year 5. And that's a good thing. Agree or disagree?
Agree. Yes.
Okay.
There are so many things that over the years, especially when I was young and dumb, that, I look back and say, how in the world? The only thing I can say is that was God's hands that I was not fired. I look back and say, wow, that is, man, how could I be that dumb?
Grace.
Yes.
All right.
Amen.
All right, here we go. Agree or disagree? Veteran coaches should adapt to this generation, not the other way around. Agree or disagree? It's a tough.
I think it is. That is a great question. I'm gonna disagree. And the main reason why I will disagree with that is because, in a coaching office, a lot of I'll use Lubbock High as an example.
Okay.
It's a very funny thing to watch me argue with one of our younger coaches, because you're talking about a Gen Xer arguing with a Gen Z, and here are the poor millennials caught in between that are just like, who do I side with? Who do I side with? And but it's, Gen X, we were raised on, this is how we do stuff. We were raised on standards and principles, and not so much
Good. That's good.
the result. It was, this is how we do it. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And we weren't really worried about the why. Because Gen X, if you ask, well, why do I have to do this? What was the usual answer? Well, because I said so.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you get popped
and then you didn't question that, because if you did, then there was usually some consequences,
Right. Right.
And Gen Z is, they are very much, and rightfully so, because it's kind of where our society is at. They are firmly entrenched in the why. Well, why do hey, show me why I have to do this and I'll do it. I'm not going to say no, but I need to know why, and I think Gen Z can really benefit from the guidance of Gen X in terms of, if you really want to know why, then you need to dig into the what and the how, because that will reveal the why to you, as opposed to the, depending on what book you start, start with the end in mind, and, find your why and all that. Those are all, and I'm not trying to slam those movements. They are very valid and extremely helpful and worthwhile movements. The issue comes with, okay, how did we get to that why? What did we do to get to that why? And what do we need to change? There's, I firmly believe that Gen X, we still have a lot to offer the profession.
Good. I'll say this. Agree. That'll be my agree. Okay, Coach, let's do one more. Let's do one more before we get into crunch time. Here we go.
Okay.
Agree or disagree? At some point, your legacy matters more than your record.
Oh, yes, absolutely agree. It's, if I firmly believe that, at the end of the day, at the end of our careers, the coaches that look back and all they can really cite is their one-loss record. What a sad career. Even if it's a tremendous number of wins, it's, what a sad career, as opposed to looking back and saying, man, Lubbock High, look at what we were able to do at Lubbock High. Look at how many of those kids that didn't believe they could really, that they could be good at anything. All of a sudden, they're going to Ivy League schools. They've made it to, they're following in the EJ Hollub's footsteps, and they've made it to the NFL. They've become successful doctors and lawyers and teachers and coaches. And, I think that, if wins and losses will determine whether, if I'm able to walk through the pearly gates, then I ain't going to make it, but if at the end of my career, I just want people to look back and say, you know what, there were 4 things that Coach Semler taught me, and that is love everybody, serve everybody, make a positive contribution, provide that value. And then lastly, demonstrate real mental toughness, which have a great attitude regardless of your situation. That is being mentally tough.
It's good stuff. I got to put that on the screen right here. 4 things that you will get from Coach Semler. Love everybody, serve everybody, provide value, and demonstrate real mental toughness. You are in the Coaches Co-op. I'm your host, Michael Prejean, better known as Coach P. We are breaking down the wins, the lessons, and everything in between with Coach Hank Semler. All right, Coach, it is crunch time.
Crunch time.
Crunch time goes 3, 2, 1. So we're going to go 3 in the key, 3 things that all coaches need. Then we'll go 2 shots, 2 of the foulest things you've experienced as a coach. And then we will wrap it up with one thing that you want to share with us before we exit for the evening. Coach, are you ready for?
I am ready.
Crunch time. All right, Coach, here we go. 3 in the key, 3 things that all coaches need. What you got for us, Coach?
Okay. It's kind of like a toolkit. In the coach's toolkit, you need an Abraham Lincoln stovepipe hat, because President Lincoln talked about, I will conquer my enemies by making them my friends. You're not always going to be liked, but if you embrace that and you work towards finding out why you're not liked and building some kind of relationship with the haters, you'll find that sometimes they're your biggest allies. And then, you need a paintbrush, because a lot of times in coaching, you paint yourself into a corner with rules and policies, and you find yourself, having to answer the question to a backup's parents of, well, how come my kid did the same thing as the starter? My kid's not getting to play and the starter's still getting to play.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be flexible. You've got to have rules that don't paint you into a corner. And then finally, every coach needs a VHS copy of Airplane, because, man, we take ourselves way too seriously.
Seriously.
That's right. You got to be able, sometimes, the guys at Lubbock, they'll tell you, last year we threw a pick 6. First thing they heard from me on the headset was, well, looks like I picked the wrong time. It looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue. You got to be able to, you just got to be able to laugh,
It's important. It is very, very important. All right. So that was 3 in the key. Let me run back through them for you. So this is what you need in your coach's toolkit: a stovepipe hat, an Abe Lincoln stovepipe hat, a paintbrush. Make sure you don't paint yourself into a corner. And then, coaches, we all need a copy of the movie Airplane. Don't take yourself so seriously. Coach, thank you for sharing those 3 things that all coaches need. This brings us to 2 shots. These are 2 of the foulest things that you have experienced in your coaching career. What do you have for us?
All right. Well, man, this one happened at the beginning of my career, and the other happened at one of my more recent stops. The first one, I actually had a head coach in the coach's restroom. He peed on my shoe. We were both at the urinals, and I'm like, what the, and he looked me in the eye and said, that's part of being a head coach. There ain't anything you can do about it, son. You just got to deal with it, and I was, no, I don't.
Wow.
I mean, that's just disgusting, isn't it?
That's nasty. That's nasty.
That is. And then, so that was like a physical foul thing. And then this last one, it's actually, to me, it's a lot more insidious than the first one, because it affects kids. I've actually had a principal tell me that he hates coaches and he really doesn't like athletes. And so, if you're going to, like, the coaching spots were the very last positions that were ever filled on the faculty. And if an athlete, we had kids that they would all but get assaulted. And if they fought back, they were the ones that were getting sent to alternative school. And the kid that actually started the fight, slap on the wrist, wouldn't even go to ISS. I mean, it was crazy, and that's a horrible abuse of power to do that.
Speechless. I'm looking. I'm looking at some of the comments on Instagram, and somebody said, "Yeah, that's fight music."
Mm-hmm.
That's bad stuff. Okay, Coach. Definitely two foul things to experience. Coach, this brings us to the very last thing of this episode. This is and one. And this is one thing, can be anything that you would like to share before we exit. So what do you have for us, Coach?
All right. It's something that I've learned, you learn it as the longer you go. And that is that nonconformity killed the dinosaurs. They were unable to adapt to a changing environment around them. Their bodies couldn't adapt, so it wiped them out. Coaches are really no different. If you find yourself, do not, let people call you a dinosaur if you're an old coach, because that's not a compliment. It means you're set in your ways. You're not flexible enough to really change with the times, and coaches have to be able to evolve. We've got to be able to keep changing with the game. If we weren't able to change with the game, man, how many kids do you really think we'd have playing nowadays? If high school football was nothing but the wing tee or the stack eye and like the Oklahoma, the 52 defense, something like that. Yeah. You'd still have some playing, but, you go to Oklahoma and you're in the spread. You go to Louisiana, you're in the spread. New Mexico, you're in the spread. Everybody around us is you got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to understand that kids are going through different things now than they were when we started. When I started, we didn't have computers in our classroom. That's how old I am, no computers. And then, nowadays we don't have to scout because we have Huddle. Everything is on computer. Kids, when I started coaching, Nintendo was the Nintendo Classic, and now kids, the warfare game and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy what kids have nowadays. And you've got to be able to lean into that. You got to be able to understand it. You may not like it, but you got to understand it. And you got to embrace it.
That's good. Lean into it, because listen, coaches, being called a dinosaur is not a compliment. Coach Semler, this has been outstanding. For those of you listening and watching, thank you for joining us here on the Coaches Co-op. Big thanks to our guest tonight, best-selling author, soon-to-be Dr. Carl Hank Semler. Coach, thank you for sharing your journey and your wisdom. For those of you watching and listening, once again, if you are walking away with new insight or energy for your program or your team, then we have done our job here on the Coaches Co-op. So here's what we need you to do. Hit that like button, follow, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. And remember, at the Co-op, coaches do what most people can't. Coach, hang back with me just for a few seconds. I'm going to get our outro music here, and then I'll be back with you in a second. For those of you listening and watching, again, this has been episode 18 of the Coaches Co-op. Until next time, peace, y'all.